what was the inspiration? What did happen to me? Well, and it was a shock to both of us. Most of us are brought up not to love ourselves, are we? It's almost like, oh, look at him, he loves himself. So that there's not that healthy love and respect that we need for ourselves. And when you're caring for the sick and the dying, as many carers are, you're going through anticipatory grief.
Thank you so much once again joining Sara Challice from England. Topic is very important. Caring for the carers, how to heal, thrive and support better. So before we move on further in our discussion, I would like to give a little brief introduction, though it's not required at all because you're well-known name, and just a formality we're doing here. You are a teacher, motivational speaker, keynote speaker associated with initiatives Who Cares for Carers, London. You're based in London, UK, United Kingdom, and you're also having your associations with the Cares UK Parliament and the Department for Education, and you're more into like teaching, academics and research. There's a lot of data at the back of it that we figured out in our research. So once again, ma'am, thank you so much joining this platform. We so would like to move on to our discussion, which is very much important. Caring for the carers, how to heal, thrive and support better. So just wanted to pitch in for the first question. It says like, what inspired you to begin your mission for supporting caregivers?
Yes. Yeah. Well, it's always learned experience, I think, when these things happen. Now I have this passion for anybody caring for a loved one, because there's millions, probably billions around the world. In fact, 2 in 3 of us will be a carer at some point in our lifetime. And the best part of 70% of us fall either mentally or physically unwell, as I did. So what was the inspiration? What did happen to me? Well, I was in my early 30s and my boyfriend, just to give a snapshot, we started going out dating. Neil was like big kind of rugby player guy, and I just got a job in London. I was all excited, but within 6 weeks of us going out, he fell ill with a malignant brain tumor, and it was a shock to both of us. So we, I was like, right up here for you, Neil, not realizing what that would mean for me as a carer. And I remember at the time, after Neil had a huge operation, we didn't know if he'd survive it. And then also back here at home, he was having chemotherapy, radiotherapy, the usual things that you have with a malignant brain tumor. And at the end of it, and he was like looking online, he goes, 18 months if I'm lucky. I said, Neil, those statistics are historic, and they're not now, they're not you right now. Things come up all the time, new research, as you know, Dr. Surrender. So with that, we carried on pursuing all these things. And actually, it wasn't 18 months for Neil, but keeping going, looking after him. I was more an emotional crutch at the first, but he became very, very disabled in the end. He had 4 tumours in his head, ended up having a stroke, ended up in a hospital bed in our living room, unable to speak with a peg feeding tube. And then my life as a carer became very small and very focused on him. And because of that, I call it the carer's response mode. We live in our subconscious. And so my reaction was constantly looking at him. My health, my wants and needs went to the back. I wasn't interested in those, and I became hardwired that way, as so many of us do. And with that, I fell mentally and physically unwell. And I found in the end, I couldn't cope, and Neil ended up going in for emergency respite. And with that, I had time out, and we can talk about that shortly. But having time out and going on a silent retreat, I realized I'd been suppressing my emotions, and I needed to make changes if I was to survive looking after Neil. Now, I did, and I started to find joy again. That's why I wrote my book, and I thought, we don't need to suffer the hard way on our own, as so many of us as carers do. But towards the end of caring for Neil, I discovered then 2 other friends, just as their caring role had come to an end. They ended up long-term sick, one with multiple sclerosis. Within 8 weeks of her husband dying, she was already in a wheelchair. Son was caring for her, and it was like a ripple effect going through the family, just this, constant illness and suffering. And another lovely lady that I knew from the charity, only 3 days after her husband had died, she'd been caring for him for years with Parkinson's. 3 days after his funeral, she was diagnosed with cancer. And I know of others, and that's why I bang a drum for anybody caring for a loved one, because we need to overcome this. Because like I said, we need to all be there for each other, to collaborate and make sure that we're a healthier society. So yeah, so that's why I have a passion for carers, and I've learned so much along the way, and also help with healthcare professionals and anybody else supporting carers as well.
Yeah, what seems to me deep and true commitment and narrative is figured out, it's going to be good for our audience. So yeah, it's certainly, supporting caregiving, the mechanism and your mindset and philosophy is very, very relevant and kind of personal. At the same time, it has to be, internalize and externalize. That's what I understand. Would like to move on to my second question. Again, very important questions is, what are the most common emotional or health challenges faced by caregivers today?
Yes, I mean, one of them is, as I said, the carer's response mode. I think most of us are brought up not to love ourselves, are we? It's almost like, oh, look at him, he loves himself. So that there's not that healthy love and respect that we need for ourselves. And when you're caring for the sick and the dying, as many carers are, you're going through anticipatory grief already. You're caring and grieving before that loved one. I was grieving years before Neil left. I cared for him for 13 years in the end. And we have that codependency as well. It becomes expected. So you're expected because you're there for them. You're the one that steps up to the mark. Other family may step back and leave you to it. I certainly found that at times as well. So I was left on my own, dealing with it. But also I was putting on that brave face. I say to all carers out there, are you putting on that brave face? Suppressing your emotions and not actually being honest and asking for help. A lot of people won't ask for help, or they won't get involved. Oh, it's a charity. I don't need that. Actually, we do need that support, and it's allowing yourself to let that guard down. And that codependency is really strong. So you expect yourself to, I've got to do this. I've got to make sure they're okay, as I did to Neil. But then other family expect it of you as well, because you've been doing it. It's, oh, he knows what he's doing. So they leave you to it. And I often, with my sessions for carers, I see serial carers. So when their caring role has come to an end, they'll end up caring for somebody else and somebody else. I was expected to care for somebody with motor neuron, a good friend of ours. Somebody texted me and said, oh, apparently you're dealing with it. What caring for another disabled man very disabled with motor neuron disease. And I thought, there must be somebody else. I don't see why it should just be me all the time. But we get caught up in it. So you just do it because it's altruistic. You're doing it out of love. And sometimes we do it out of fear because we want to make it look like we're coping. So, and also carer's guilt is a really big one. I found I had carer's guilt as well. Damned if you do, damned if you don't. So, you try and get out and have a break, but you judge yourself as well. And I found other family judged me for going out. And I talk about, if anybody here is on Facebook, I always had a smile on my face on there. I mean, why would I show them me crying on Neil or cleaning his peg tube or turning him and changing his nappy? Nobody wants to see that on Facebook. So there's, oh, well, Sarah, she looks all right. So we're putting on this face, and then you feel guilty going out. I mean, doesn't your loved one need you? So guilt is a big one. And with that, it took me a while, if anybody out there is feeling guilty, pushing back, and knowing where to say no, having healthier boundaries and carving out time for you. If you've not been doing it, it's difficult, but small steps to start to really bring your interests and your needs back into your life again is crucial. So yeah, there's lots actually, but just a few of those there. And your connection is key as well. That's really important. So talking about health challenges, a lot of carers end up with their own health conditions due to that continued stress and burden.
Certainly, like the emotional health challenges, they actually double the problem, not exactly double, but enhances to a great extent. That's what I understand. I must talk to one of the very important point, award-winning author also. You are best-selling book, Who Cares, which seems to be at the back of you sitting. So that's really wonderful for us to have you once again. So would like to move on to my third question, but certainly emotional contact, and physical, when it has a blend, certainly aggravates the pathology of that situation, whether it be physically, biologically, or emotionally or socially. I agree to that. Would like to move on to my third question. Says, how can caregivers take care of their own well-being while caring for others?
Yes, well, it can take up to 2 years for most carers to realise that they are caring. They are a carer or a caregiver, as they're known in the States. So that's one thing. There's a lot of us who are hidden carers. We don't realise, and it can take years, or for crisis to strike, as it did for me, to realise. So number one is finding that out and discovering. And I would say, firstly, realizing you're a carer and gaining clarity. And it's really a change of perception. We suppress our emotions, as I said, and which can lead to illness. But gaining clarity, opening up to others. When I fell ill, when I came back home again, I started to connect in with myself, through journaling. Journaling is so powerful, I find, with, just a pad and a pen, starting to write down all your thoughts that are going round and round in a loop, because you're dealing with so much, you don't realize, and it gets it out onto the page, and you can see the wood for the trees, as it were, and actually connecting with others. That's what I found really helped as well. So my neighbor was a carer as well. So we'd meet on a Sunday and say, how have you been? Have you been better or worse? What have been the issues? How can I overcome this? And so actually connecting in regularly and checking in with yourself, I think, is number one. So noticing what the issues are for you at this time. And connection is key as well. And number two, putting the feelers out to all that's available out there. I think we don't get handed all the benefits and the, what's available on a silver platter, which is really annoying. You're caring and you're in overwhelm, and I'm saying, yes, you have to put the feelers out. Ring up if you have a local carers centre. I think we're all different, especially in India, in America, in the UK. If you have a local charity, give them a call and say, what is available for me right now? And I found that really beneficial. It took me years to find out what was available for me in this area. But when I got it in place, it made a huge difference to my health and well-being, and for Neil as well, supporting both of us, because most of us are isolated as carers. And I also share, as in the book, which is award-winning, is strategies, finding those healthy boundaries, knowing where to say no, push back. You can feel it in your body. If another family member goes, oh, can you just do this? Or you can feel it if you're like, oh my God, I feel stressed. If you're feeling stressed, the answer's no. Push back, carve out time for you. And another thing is take a break, take regular breaks. Don't feel guilty about it. You need it. And having time in the outside space helps you deal with the inside space. So because when you're here in the house dealing with everything all the time, you're firefighting. You might be in that fight or flight response. So you're in that stress mode. But if you just get out, go for a walk, take some long, deep breaths, it actually helps your body come back to homeostasis, helps you to relax. And then you can start to think, oh, what do I need to do differently? How do I need to make myself feel better? And everybody is different who'll be listening to this. I'd also speak up, ask for help. Really important. Don't suffer in silence. There's lots more as well, and there's lots more strategies in my book, but those are some of the really key facts that really help anybody caring for a loved one.
Thanks a lot for letting us know on this important area, like looking after your own well-being while caring for others. That's very, very important in order to practice and have that healthiness in you in order to impart it out to the people. Would like to move on to my fourth question, a very important question again, and says, in what ways can healthcare professionals better understand and support the needs of caregivers?
Yes, thank you. Well, thinking there's all sorts of things, but I think first off is allowing carers that space to speak, and every carer is unique in the person they care for, and the dynamics that happens, it's very complex when it comes to caring, so much so. And I remember years ago when I was caring for Neil, I was not in a good place, and I had a carer's assessment. I don't know if they have those in India or America, etc., but it was a place where they assessed me, and I had like an interview, and I remember going in there angry. I was frustrated, and he said, well, what do you need? I said, well, what have you got for to help me care for a terminally ill husband? I couldn't see that there could be any light for me. And he said, well, why don't you just tell me what's been going on? What's your story? And because he said that, I opened up. It gave me a chance to speak, allowed me to share all that was happening without fear of reprisal. And that I opened up. It's like I was a pressure cooker. And as I opened up, I sobbed uncontrollably. I was really surprised. I kind of laughed a few times because I was in front of a complete stranger. But in doing that, having a carer's assessment, speaking to healthcare professionals, to charities, and opening up, I think is number one. It's really beneficial. And also then you're registered as a carer. They are aware that you are a carer and making sure that you are. Also with your local doctor, making sure that they are aware that you are a carer as well. And often here in the UK, you end up having, vaccines first, etc., because we need to make sure that you're okay. Because if you fall ill as a carer, somebody's got to pick up two people, you and the person that they're caring for. And respite. I found this really important. I mentioned that, and Neil went in for emergency respite. Carers need, respite. We need breaks regularly, not just to rest and recoup, but also to reassess your caring role. Notice how you're feeling. What can I do differently? That's really important. I kind of bang a drum about that also out on our health and wellbeing board here in London. We need to have respite for carers, allowing them to have breaks, even if it's for a few hours, or even for me, it was those 2 weeks because I'd fallen ill for a long time at that time. And so those are really important. And I will just say, read my book. There's loads in there, loads of background. There's a section for healthcare professionals as well, anybody supporting those caring for a loved one. And I give sessions of talks. So it's really allowing to open for everybody to understand what goes on. It's really great to allow somebody with lived experience to chat about this as well. And like I say, I give talks in companies as well. A lot of companies, I don't know if you're finding that in India, that we have some of the larger companies, they have carer networks or carer hubs. And so I've given sessions and talks with them. So for example, our supermarket here, Sainsbury's has an estimated 20,000 unpaid carers on their workforce. That's a lot. That's a lot of people caring. And so they asked me to come and give a session. So it's even within companies and workplace is, supporting carers there and allowing them to be able to speak up and receive that support that they need so they can carry on working, carry on with their job, but being there for their loved one as well. I didn't get that support in the end. Right at the end, I did at first, but then it tailed off. And up to 600 people leave work a day in the UK due to not getting that support within the workplace. So I think that's really crucial. So there's all sorts of ways that we can collaborate and start to really support and understand carers so that we can give them what they need to carry on being there for your loved one, be them for themselves, and if they're of working age, to carry on working, because if you give up work, of course, it's expensive. And a lot of carers end up in poverty because of that as well, in financial, struggle. So there's all these elements of how we can start to collaborate. Also, like I said, I'm on the Health and Wellbeing Board, and I feel, on different sorts of boards in India as well, all over the world, having somebody with lived experience, having a carer representative on there is really important. It allows us to see the gaps in the papers and the reports, especially when there's funding. And it's like, so if it's somebody with a long-term condition within the work, within the your area of where you live, you can guarantee there's probably a carer behind them. Are they receiving that right support? So yes, thank you.
Wonderful narrative, wonderful explanation. Your personal experience seems to be more of coming in between, which is really making it more dynamic and making it more alive for us. Thank you so much. Now I would like to move on to my fifth question, which is also a wrap up and final question, but a very, very important question is, if you consider one powerful habit that transforms your own caregiving experience, what would it be?
Habits. There's been a few things actually, which of course I often share. I mentioned it already. Journaling is really powerful. I think it's good for anybody who's going through tough times and issues. It helps you to write it out. I always call it a mini coaching session. So just getting a pad and pen. Mine's, often it's by the side of your bed, and just writing out what are the issues, what's going on, and then start to say, well, what can I do about it? Now, for me personally, when Neil was slowly dying of a brain tumor, I had no control over that, but I did have control of how I reacted to it. So sometimes if you have no control, it's letting go. And I felt that I had to just kind of softly let go of Neil, and just all I can do is give my love, and that's the best I can do. But any good points that I made for myself, I then underline those, and I can then refer back to them. I found those really powerful. So that's a great habit for me. And really an eye-opener for me was going on that silent retreat. So it is that respite again, getting away from everything if you can. And the silent retreat made me realize how poorly I was and how I needed to make changes so that I could survive this. So that's, that was crucial for me. So there's been other things that I talk about habits, but, and I think getting out and seeing my friends was really important. Those who really get you, those that you can just speak your truth without, worrying or being judged. I think, if you've got friends, give them a ring. Make sure you include them in your life. I think a lot of carers, are isolated and think, oh, well, they don't want to hear about me. And I've not done anything apart from caring. I mean, I was a call at one time as well. But you do need to ring your friends if they're not calling you. And, don't be an island. Reach out. It's so incredibly important. Thank you.
Much for giving your precious time and covering this wonderful topic for us, for our audience. It seems like, I understand, or you make a message out of it. That's what I understood somewhere back in the history, maybe reading some of my books. Or maybe a painful situation, you can either become bitter or you can get better. So that's what I understand. And sense your personal experience, your personal trauma, pain, suffering, but you internalized it at the same time very constructively, but also the externality of it is very much compatible and developmental for the expansion, for the betterment of society. That's what I understand. You talked about caregiving, once, and supporting better how and what inspired beginning and inception of your journey, and emotional and healthcare challenges faced by health caregivers and caregiving. Take care, their well-being, personal well-being. That's what you talked about, your professional understanding, how we can better understand this context, and at the same time your personal experience, how transforming this domain. Once again, joining this platform, resource, pairing on this platform, coming on board. It's a wonderful possibility for us, our team, as well as for the public, who watch our podcast. So thank you so much once again. As you are already familiar, that resource, the platform where we try to step through the noise to, cause you most relevant answers to societal problems. It may be global societal problems and challenges such as we cover public health domain, human rights, human trafficking, developmental issues, gender, different research in academia. That's the reason you're on board with us. So once again, thank you so much for joining us, ma'am.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to share my website. If anybody would like to hear it, it's www.whocares4carers.com, whocares4carers.com. And I've got lots of videos on there, the book's on there, so you can read a bit more of anything to help you as well. So thank you so much for inviting me. Much appreciated. Thank you.